Hello, you've been busy.
I have a canning plan.
What's your canning plan?
I'm canning tomatoes.
Here we are then. Last time I showed you how I was doing test tiles, making them of different thicknesses and different shapes and different sizes so that I can see how they dry, what we like the look of, how much they shrink and everything. And so they've been drying for a few days now, I think 2 or 3 days, and they're at the leather hard stage, I hope. I haven't checked on them, but they should be at leather hard, which means that they still feel wet. They're still sort of bendable, but they're no longer completely floppy, but neither are they completely hard. And that means I can start to do some of my decoration. When you glaze a tile, if you're going to do slipware, which I'll explain in a few minutes, you have to be doing it when it's still wet. Otherwise, it will crack and flake off most likely. So I'm going to have a look at my tiles, see how they're doing, and then start my decorative experimentation. Oh gosh, look at that pretty little leaf. Well, so far they're looking incredibly flat, absolutely brilliant, no curvature at all, but neither have they been squashed, which was something of a concern. They're completely flat. It's brilliant. We're not out of the woods yet, but this is amazing. And you can see on these pre-fired tiles where the water's soaked into them because they're so porous, which is absolutely perfect because it draws the water out evenly, which is what prevents the curving. The thing that's been keeping me up at night, literally been keeping me up at night, is thinking about how to do a raised pattern on these, but still dry them in between 2 heavy objects like these, because surely that'll squash them. And the whole point of sort of slipware is to put nice, thick, like painting designs. And I don't know, Kelly told me to just trust that it'll merge with the design. But I've decided that I think the way I'm going to do this is through inlay, whereby you scrape out a design and then you pour the slip in and then you scrape, once it's dried a bit, you scrape the top and it looks like a perfect inlaid design. And I think that might solve some of the problems I had with my carving last time. Slipware is just basically liquid clay that you put as a surface, and it makes a beautiful smooth surface, and you can use it like a paint, but it is still just clay, but you can add other stuff in. So the Mako stroke and coat paints that I was using for my peacock mural, if you watched the last episode, they are a mixture of slip and glaze, so they have the texture of paint and the beautiful brilliance of glaze. And Kelly has convinced me that I can try tinting the glaze myself, and I'm going to try using the pigments that we used on the plaster upstairs here in one of our older episodes. And I'm going to attempt to mix these with the liquid clay and I'll test them on the tiles in a variety of different ways. And when we fire them, we'll see what they look like when they've been fired, because they can often change colour quite drastically. And to make slipware, you need to take bone dry clay. So that's clay that's just been left out and gone completely hard but hasn't been fired yet. And you break it down into a powder, and then you soak it in water, and it overnight ideally, but can sometimes just take a few hours. And then you can add in what you want in the way of pigments or oxides or anything else. I'm doing these experiments now, and I'm going to be testing what quantity of pigment I put in and things like that. So I need to be completely precise about my measurements. So I'm going to break down my clay, and then I'm going to weigh it to make sure I know exactly how much I'm putting in, and then how much pigment I'm putting in, so that when I fired this lot and I've decided which colours I like, I know how to replicate it afterwards. And that means being able to measure it down to the milligram, ideally, microgram, the one that's a thousandth of a gram. So I've ordered these special scales for it. It's a very simple process to make the clay dust. You put the bone dry clay in a solid bag and then smack it with a rolling pin or something else. I won't be able to talk because I'll be doing my respirator business. So I'll just get on with it.
Non più tra i farfalloni amoroso, notte giorno di torno girano, delle belle tornando al riposo, ma ci sento agito d'amor. Delle belle tornando al riposo, ma ci sento agito d'amor.
Right, okay. So it's not exactly dust, but it's very small particles, which means very small lumps, which means firstly it will break down quicker when I put it in water, but secondly it's going to be easier for me to weigh small quantities. Obviously I have to weigh it when it's dry, because once you've added water, you can't calculate the amount of dry weight that you put in. But before I start mixing that up, because I'm waiting for my scales to arrive, so that I can measure it out, I'm going to start drawing some designs on here that I can then fill with the slip afterwards, because I'm a bit concerned by how fast they're drying. If I don't get carving, it'll get too hard to do it. So I'm going to have a little go. Amazingly, I found my old sketches for last year, plus my calculations, and the stencil that I used to draw with. And so I might, just as an example, try to inscribe one of these and then see if I can replicate that with the slip. So these carvings, these engravings, don't need to be very deep, because the slip will just sit on top of anything. And the earliest slipware was what you've seen probably in the Greek and Roman empires. Some of you might know I was an archaeologist before. It was my first career. And when you find Greek and Roman pottery, you'll see when it's broken that there's a layer of pottery and then a very thin, shiny layer on top. So all those beautiful vases. And that is slipware. And so the slip can be very, very thin, and you just need to scratch away a little bit. So that's quite nice, because I don't have to worry about how well I carve these out. Which I did have to worry about when I was just doing a simple engraving, and which is really what went quite wrong on my original ones. So I've done my first pass at the engraving, and I think I'm going to need to get a scalpel from the house to clean it up a tiny bit, but it's not supposed to be the finished product. And it was a lot faster than when I was carving with a view to it being the perfect finished product. Now what I'm going to do is go through and just do some little random designs to try the slip in the different colours that I've got. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And I'm going to want to do, I would say 2 different strengths for both of them, for all of them. So that's 26 tunnels that I'm going to do. I also want to experiment with some washes and things like that. Amazingly, I've managed to fit 26 little trenches on this one tile. So I'm going to be able to use this one tile as the way of measuring the strengths and colours of my pigments. And then I'm going to be free to try some other techniques on the other tiles.
It's the end of the tomato season and there's still a lot on the tomato plants that need harvesting. So I need to collect all of them and I'll make a big batch of tomato sauce to be canned for the winter. So Juliette is coming to help me to do that. The end of the summer has been a bit cold and rainy after a very hot July, and so we have loads of tomatoes but they're really struggling to ripen. So I need to pick the most ripe ones and hope that the others ripen a bit later. But I think we'll have loads of green tomatoes to do some green tomato chutneys and other things. We'll have to be inventive for what we do with them. My tomato plants don't look very good because I haven't had enough time to clear them, so it's completely overgrown and it means they've been rotting more than they would have normally. So next year I'll try to be a bit more consistent, but it was really hard with the kids this summer, so I didn't really have time to manage all of that. I now need to process the tomatoes, so I'm just canning them very simply because they are not all evenly ripe, and I just need to cut off the bad bits and boil everything with herbs to make it taste nice. and then I'll simmer it or not depending on how it goes, and then can them, sterilize, and put them in the cellar for the winter.
Non più tra i farfalloni amoroso, notte e giorno di torno girano, delle belle turbando al riposo, narcisetto giro d'amor. Delle belle turbando al riposo, narcisetto.
These are not pretty like tomatoes from the supermarket, but they're a lot tastier.
Non più avrai questi bei panacchini, quel cappello leggero galante, quella chioma, quell'aria brillante, quel vermiglio d'onesco color, quel vermiglio d'onesco color. Non più avrai quei panacchini, quel cappello, quella chioma, quell'aria brillante. Non più avrai farfalloni amoroso, notte giorno giorno.
This is the herb garden. It's a bit overgrown because it's been raining so much and I haven't had time to keep up with it, but there are loads of nice herbs. I have bay leaves, wild celery and rosemary. I think it should give a nice taste to the tomatoes.
Somebody woke up from their nap.
Oh, Matthew, did you have a good sleep? Or are you not asleep yet?
Awake.
Tu veux sentir? Awake. C'est bon?
Oh, du bouillon.
Qu'est-ce que c'est ça?
What's that one, baby?
Du laurier.
Oui,
C'est quoi?
oui.
It's a bay leaf.
Guerrieri po bacco, gran bustacchi stretto sacco, schioppo in spalla, sciabla a fianco.
The tomatoes have been simmering for a little while now, and I'm going to start simmering them.
Molto onor, poco cantante, poco cantante, poco cantante. Ed invece del fandango, una marcia per il fango, per montagne, per valloni, con le nevi e salioni al concerto di tromboni.
All the tomatoes are sieved, and now I just need to can them and sterilize.
Non più avrai quei panacchini, non più avrai quel cappello, non più avrai quella chioma, non più avrai quell'aria brillante, non più avrai farfalloni amoroso, notte e giorno di torno girato, delle belle turbando al riposo, narcisetto ad un giro d'amor. Delle belle turbando al riposo, narcisetto ad un giro d'amor. Cherubino alla vittoria, alla gloria militar. Cherubino alla vittoria, alla gloria militar, alla gloria.
Hello, you've been busy.
I have a canning plan.
I love your puns. What's your canning plan?
Now I'm canning tomatoes.
Will there be any left for lunch?
Cherubin alla vittoria, alla gloria militar, alla gloria militar, alla gloria militar.
Okay. What do you think of my beautiful label?
Oh, that's pretty. Yeah, I like it. It's exactly what I thought. I like the edge you've put.
It's like a wine label,
Beautiful.
that's why.
Yeah. I love your beautiful labels. You're a great artist.
I didn't draw them, I just stuck them into a Word document. I didn't even do that very well.
You did.
Mini labels. I'm pleased with them.
Well done.
So, are there any notes you want me to add to your tiles list?
Yeah, this one I messed up because I did the second coat and I shouldn't have. And then the cat jumped on it and everything. Then
What's on the literal spray? No, don't.
The cat.
You take your cat and go indoors and leave me to do the rest of it. Goodbye, I'll miss you.
Me too. Miss you a lot.